So India's women's team didn't just beat Sri Lanka in the final T20. They absolutely demolished them to complete a dominant series whitewash. We're going to break down exactly how they pulled it off. Let's get right into it.
I mean, how dominant are we talking? Well, this one number pretty much says it all. 6.4. That's how many overs India still had in the tank when they hit the winning runs. Yeah, this wasn't just a win, it was a total statement.
Okay, so that's the what. But what about the how? How on earth did India pull off such a crushing series sweep? To figure that out, we're going to dive into two absolute game-changing performances and some historic records that got shattered along the way. All right, first things first, let's get the context right. This final match in Thiruvananthapuram, it wasn't just some one-off game. This was the exclamation point on a 3-0 series sweep, which just goes to show how much control India had over the entire tour. So let's look at the numbers, just to see how this played out. Sri Lanka puts up a pretty modest 112 on the board. And in response, India, well, they just made it look ridiculously easy. They cruised to the target in just over 13 overs, losing only 2 wickets. A truly, truly clinical performance. So you might be wondering, how do you make a chase look that easy? Well, it all starts with the ball. And for that, we have to talk about the player of the match, Renuka Singh Thakur. Her bowling performance basically dismantled any hope Sri Lanka had of posting a big score. And this is what I find so cool. It's not just about the stats, it's about the why. Renuka actually talked about being inspired by the legend, Jhulan Goswami, and how she was pushing herself to not just get wickets, but to hunt for that famous 5-wicket haul. You know, that's the kind of mindset that really separates the good players from the great ones. Okay, so she didn't quite get that 5 first she was dreaming of. But her 4 wickets, absolutely devastating. She just ripped right through Sri Lanka's top order, and that was the whole key. As her captain Harmanpreet Kaur said, in T20 cricket, getting those early breakthroughs is everything. It sets the whole tone. All right, so the bowlers did their job. They set a pretty low bar, and that just set the stage perfectly for an all-out assault from the batters. And who better to lead that charge than Shafali Verma, who put on a clinic in power hitting to end the match in a real hurry. 79 not out. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. But that's not just a big score, it's a record breaker. This is now the highest individual score by an Indian woman against Sri Lanka in T20 history. Period. So what was her secret? How'd she do it? Well, the data here tells a really interesting story. Look, against the Pacers, she was solid, right? A strike rate of about 117. But against the spinners? Oh, she just went to a whole other level. A strike rate of 200. That's just insane. And if you want to get even more specific, this chart shows you her game plan. Just look at what happened when she came down the track at the bowlers. Her strike rate explodes to an unbelievable 320. That's not just aggressive, that's pure, fearless dominance. And here's a stat that just blows my mind. To really understand her impact, get this. She scored almost 69% of the team's total runs. That's another record, by the way. It wasn't really a team effort in the chase. It was literally the Shafali Verma show. But believe it or not, Shafali wasn't the only one rewriting the record books that day. This win was huge for the whole team, and especially for their captain, who quietly made some serious history of her own. I mean, just take a second and look at this. With this one win, Harmanpreet Kaur moves past the legendary Australian captain Meg Lanning. She is now officially the most successful captain in the entire history of women's T20 international cricket. That is a truly monumental achievement. And it doesn't stop there. This win also gave Harmanpreet the record for the most wins by any captain against a single team. Plus, it was India's 4th straight T20I series win against Sri Lanka. You see the pattern here? This is long-term, sustained dominance. Okay, so finally, let's hear from the captains themselves. Because what they said after the match, well, it really paints a clear picture of two teams that are on completely different paths right now. So first you've got Harmanpreet Kaur. After a 3-0 demolition, you'd think she'd be celebrating, right? Nope. She's already focused on what's next. She's talking about raising the standard, being even more aggressive for the World Cup. That, right there, is the mentality of a champion team. And then you have the Sri Lankan captain, Chamari Athapattua. And the difference is just night and day. She's brutally honest, right? She says her team is struggling, especially with the bat, and they just need to get back to basics.
It really shows you the massive gap between these two sides at the moment.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? We've seen records tumble, a captain make history, and a team that is clearly not satisfied even with a perfect scoreline. The big T20 World Cup is just around the corner, which leads us to the one question that really matters. Is this dominant, ruthless performance a sign that Team India is peaking at the absolute perfect time?